Hello and welcome to Maths with Jacob. This lesson will focus on mass. This video will introduce the idea of mass. Mass refers to the amount of matter that makes up any given object. In later years we will see that the word weight is not the same as mass, although many people incorrectly believe that the two words have the same meaning. It is important to know that an object with a large size does not necessarily have a larger mass than a smaller object. Now here's an example to illustrate that. Here we have a little cup. We can put tea or coffee in that cup. And here we have a balloon. The balloon is larger than the cup, but the cup is heavier than the balloon. That's the important thing. The cup is heavier. So the cup has a larger mass. Here we have a paper clip and here we have a fork. If you put a paper clip in one hand and a fork in the other, the paper clip feels lighter. Hence, the paper clip has less mass than a fork. For each of the following objects, number them in order from 1 to 4, where 1 has the largest mass and 4 has the smallest mass. So here we have a normal sized apple. This is like a pin used for a lot of different things to fasten things together. That's a normal sized marble, and that's a brick. So we're going to put 1 next to the object which has the largest mass and think about how heavy something is or how light something is. So I think we know for a fact that this brick will have the largest mass. If you lift that up, it's quite heavy. The next one, if you lift it up, I think would be the apple. I'm sure you'd agree with that. So that's second in line. So there's the largest mass. That's the next largest. Now the third largest, if you pick up that marble, I think that'd be the next largest in mass. And this one has the smallest mass. Okay, so they're in order from 1 to 4. Here we're going to write true or false for each of the following statements. Number 1. A brick has a larger mass than a tissue box. Now just think about which one is the heavier. So we're using the words heavy or light. So try and think of that. So a brick has a larger mass than a tissue box, and you say to yourself, well, a brick is definitely heavier. So that is true. So we'll do T or F just to make it short. We don't have to write true or false. We'll just do T for true and F for false. A grape has a smaller mass than a pumpkin. So if you put each of those in, one of those in each hand, you will see that that is true. A watermelon has a larger mass than a banana. Same again. Put a watermelon in one hand and a banana in the other, and you'll see that the watermelon definitely has a larger mass, so that's true. A pencil has a smaller mass than a hammer. That's a normal hammer that a tradesman will use, and that's just a normal pencil that you use at school. So the pencil has a smaller mass. Look at that, they're all true so far. And the last one, a bicycle has a smaller mass than a motor vehicle. That is definitely true. So the 5 of those statements are all true. Some words we might use for this topic. So some words that can be used when we're talking about mass, obviously the word mass itself, large, small, heavy, light, big, little, gigantic, and tiny. Now here is an example of 3 sentences, and let's have a read what they're saying. Just a little bit of information. Let's think about what they're saying. A semi-trailer is very large and very heavy. It has a large mass. Okay, so that's just some information, and that makes sense. A balloon can be large, but it has a small mass. So the normal balloon that we saw earlier, not the big balloon that floats in the sky, just those balloons you use for parties, they can be reasonably large, depending on how much you blow them up, but they're very light, aren't they? So that's why their mass is small. A grape is much smaller than a watermelon. Melon. A grape is much smaller than a watermelon. The grape has a smaller mass. So all those sentences make sense. Here are some interesting questions now about mass. Here we have 2 boxes, there and there. Both boxes are identical in every way. So every single feature of these boxes is the same. There is no difference between box A and box B. Now look at the important information. Box A is filled with feathers. So this box here is filled with feathers. Box B is filled with sand. Which box has the larger mass? Okay, fill this with feathers, fill that with sand, and pick each of them up individually, one at a time. I think you will definitely agree that box B will be much heavier. So box B will have the larger mass. The strand of wool is twice as long as the nail. Which item has the larger mass? So here is some wool. That's just used for knitting. You might knit a jumper or something else with it. And here is a nail. Now let's assume, say this nail is about 10 centimetres long. Okay, just as an example, let's say that nail is 10 centimetres, which is sort of close to the length of a pencil, I suppose. Might be a little bit smaller. And this one is 20 centimetres. Now if you put the nail in one hand and the strand of wool in the other, which item is heavier? I think you would agree that it would be the nail. Okay, so the nail is heavier. N-A-I-L. So this video has introduced the idea of mass. We've given a simple definition of mass, and we've looked at various objects and their mass, and we've learnt the very important thing that even though something might be a little bit larger than something else, it doesn't mean the mass is larger. It depends on the objects you are considering.